Like they don't recommend your name ruling that, or they don't
Right.
recommend you put it on the list?
That we don't name it that. I think John was going to speak to
Okay,
it.
you're supposed to, like, I knew there was some reason as to why. What? Huh?
Before you do run out, I was going to have you sign those if you don't mind.
This is my last one.
No?
Maybe.
You have to run our way through that part.
Mandy, we get to, if you get elected, it might be you.
Yeah. Maybe you're going to be doing a second term. Who knows?
Thank you.
Please don't stir her up before I talk to her, okay?
Too late.
It's nothing bad, she didn't do
Nope.
anything wrong, just needs to be removed.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, I did. Donna Hudson. She was trying to get me to set up an account for this electronic signature, and I was like, I don't think it's wise for me to do that. I said because I'm only the president for a little bit longer, and then and I'm not running for re-election, so I was like,
Yep, I ran through her at John's thing, and then I've already got something stuff down. So
okay.
perfect. Are we supposed to actually start today at 6:25? This thing.
Oh shoot, I forgot about that. You're right.
Thing. I know.
I'm going to go ahead and call to order the USD 489 Board of Education Board meeting. Actually, the first thing we're going to call to order is the budget hearing, which was supposed to start at 6:25, and I'm running a few minutes late, so I'm going to go ahead and call to order the budget hearing. And the only two items on there are the fiscal year 19 notice of budget hearing and the republishing of the fiscal year 19 budget. So there's the,
You want me to talk a little bit about that, Mandy?
sure, go right ahead,
Okay,
Keith.
I'm going to talk about the general fund, and I'm going to ask Mr. Hip to talk about the special ed fund, which is our local fund, and he'll talk about the two funds like he has before. But in our general fund, we originally published 18,919,087. We received a little more money than we were anticipating when you first published the budget in August. So to have authority to spend that budget, we needed to republish, which we have done. And this will be the last piece where you folks approve it, just like you did in August. We did publish 19,043,877, which is more than what we needed, but it will give you the authority to spend what you actually received. So I'll ask Mr. Hip maybe to talk about our special ed budget a little bit.
On the special ed side, if you remember, there's two different special ed funds in the Oregon budget. One is the co-op budget. The one we're talking about now is the district's special education fund. So that's what you pay the co-op district assessments and flow through the state aid, pay for special education, transportation, things like that. Back in August, it was published for 4.369. And really, it was just a miscalculation, really, I think, because the budget was being set last year. This time, just underestimated state categorical aid for per teacher entitlement. So we republished it for 4.9. We did get, just like if you remember, a couple of 2 or 3 board meetings ago, we talked about the fact that categorical aid per teacher entitlement was estimated to be 30,610, but that is always dependent this time of year, always dependent on what the final number of special education teachers in the state is. As we said, our May report and our June report, which June is the final, there was no change. At the state level, there were 230 FTE that showed up for the first time in June. So categorical aid consequently went down from 30,610 to 30,085, which cost our co-op around $63,000. So it turns out we wouldn't have had to republish for quite so high because because state aid came in a little lower than what we were being told it would be. But like Mr. Hall said, you want to publish it high, it doesn't affect anything, tax levies or anything like that. It just gives us the authority to spend, gives the district the authority to pay the co-op the money that flows through to us.
And then all we would need is just to ask you to approve the budget as presented.
Do I have a motion?
I so move to approve the amended budget as presented.
A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Just a quick question, Keith. So what was the reason that we actually republished it again?
Something I didn't mention, we had more students than predicted on our student count. And that increased the amount of dollars we were receiving, and we didn't, when you first published it, you didn't publish high enough in order to have
Okay.
authority to pay for that,
Okay.
to spend the money. Good question,
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? All right, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the budget as presented, I say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. This meeting is adjourned. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular USD 489 Board of Education Board meeting for Monday, June 17th. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the agenda, and I have one thing I would like to move. I need to move the personnel transactions to after executive session. So I'm going to pull those from the consent agenda and move those to later. Does anybody else have any additional changes?
Wait 1 sec.
That's not on this one. It's on the next board. Did you see your name?
Greg said to move
Oh.
it. Is it not on this one?
Pretty sure it's not. Never mind. Hold on.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. Double checking something.
Just getting through it real quick and make sure. No, it's not.
Okay. Disregard my request to move that. I will have a change and amendment to that when we get to those, and I'll make that comment when we get to those. We'll leave it as is then. So I do need an approval for the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Thank you, Sophia.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Young, second by Board Member Oborny. All those in favor, or is there any discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. This time is the one and only opportunity for audience participation. Is there any takers tonight? I can never see if there's anybody behind that podium.
They're hiding.
Okay?
Nope.
All right, moving on. Next thing is communications from other organizations to include Hayes Rec Commission meeting minutes and agenda, Early Childhood Connections Director Report from June 10th, 2019, Early Childhood Connections Policy Council meeting minutes from April 29th, 2019. Does anybody have any questions or discussion on any of those items? Okay, seeing none, moving on. Before we go on to school spotlights and report of superintendent, I would like to thank John for his service to USD 49. Sad to see you go. Best of luck in retirement and reuniting with your family. So, give John a hand. And also, I think she's already scrambled out of the room. No, she's sitting over there. I can't. These tables are terrible, just so you know. I'd like to introduce Sarah's replacement, Jess, and I'm going to butcher your last name again. If you want to stand up and. Reeling. Okay, thank you. Jess, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm from Quinter.
Okay.
Born and raised, left for Topeka for about 12 years and have returned. Worked in social services for 20 years. So this is new and exciting.
Cool.
Welcome. And again, Sarah Boo, but welcome, Jess. It's good to have you. Back to you, John.
There are a few spotlights to share. One I'd like to point out is the Ed Camp that was Ed Camp Kansas that was volunteered to be here in Hayes. I want to point out that Marie Henderson did a fine job of getting it organized, and almost 100 individuals that participated. We had this it was June 4th, and it was at the high school. We had area educators participate. The topics that we ended up providing was quite a variety. It was flexible seating, elementary writers workshop, early childhood seesaw, Google applications, PLC breakout groups, kindergarten readiness skills, student motivation, teacher organization, teacher self-care, various subject-based sessions. So there's quite a few different items that you could be involved in as you were part of that, and it was really nice, our second year of having still a good turnout here at Hayes for that. We had Hayes High student attends Leadership Academy. In that case, it was really great that we have an incoming senior, Levi Hickert, who attended the 82nd Annual American Legion Boys State of Kansas Leadership Academy. And that was at K-State. And that was early in June. There was 420 young men that were afforded that opportunity, and they promote mutual respect of others, instilling civic responsibility, problem solving, relevant leadership opportunities for its participants. So really quite an honor for Levi to be part of that and represent Hayes at that particular academy. We had Heartland Community Foundation. They awarded the Hope Pantry grant of $3,000. The grant's going to be used to provide care packages of food and hygiene projects to families in need during Thanksgiving, Christmas, and spring break. And then we end up having the Hayes High soccer athletes named to All-State soccer team. I really want to congratulate the athletes who were named to the Kansas High School Soccer Coaches Association 5A All-State team. Seniors Callie Leiker was named to the second team, and senior Savannah Schneider received an honorable mention. We also ended up having, I want to congratulate Jamie Getz, high school teacher, for earning the American Red Cross Biomedical Achievement Award. This award is given to those who are successful in recruiting blood donors. High school went from collecting 36 units of blood last year to 75. So really great to end up having Jamie's participation with that. I think that's all of the spotlights. The only item that I would have for my report this evening is just as well saying thank you to the Board of Education for the opportunity you've given me to serve the Hayes community. I felt that you were very kind and understanding. It's amazing your support of me when I come to you not in the best of health, and to be where I am at this point, and I appreciate your faith and trust in me as we work through a number of things, and I do wish the very best for Hayes and the decisions that you're going to be pressed with in the near future. I really pray the best for all of you, and wholeheartedly appreciate, like I said, Hayes is a great community. I have never been as welcomed into a community as wholeheartedly as Hayes did for me, and it was at a time that was really quite challenging. So for me to leave, on that emotional note, is just saying I really do appreciate what you did for me. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll move on to the financial report. Keith?
Okay, let the slide come up. Okay, this chart shows, and this is from Alio, it shows where we were at prior to basically encumbering our payroll for the summer salaries. It shows that we have enough to do what we need to do to finish the year. Those salaries are the biggest bulk of it. You can see we have $3 million in our general fund and 1.7 in supplemental general. So that's a good place to be right now, or while we're in the process. The important number we've been looking at on a different spreadsheet. You don't have that up on the chart. I didn't have it available when things went out a week ago. But we've been doing some other calculations in our office to project out where we'll finish up the year as it pertains to carryover, and we've talked about that a little bit throughout this second semester. Our numbers are showing we'll end the year somewhere around the $230,000 range on the plus side, which is a good thing. When I first came, I did not see those numbers come through, but obviously when you get closer to the end of the year, it's becomes more obvious. So for a district this size, that number in my mind shows we're breaking even. We don't have a lot to transfer in to start the next year, which is always nice to have when you do have it. But we'll end the year kind of breaking even in my mind, and that's a good thing. So, and we'll get some new money next year, which will help us kind of get started. Any questions about financial report? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Moving on, the next thing is the consent agenda, which includes the board meeting minutes from May 20th, 2019, special board meeting minutes from June 3rd. The personnel transactions with an amendment, Jill Shaben needs to be removed from the list. She was incorrectly listed on there, so that amendment needs to be made. Approval of bills, financial reports, clerk's report, investment report, petty cash reports, and approval of federal meal program for nutrition services. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I just have a couple of quick questions. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the amendments listed.
I just have a couple of quick questions on the other one. What is our reasoning for some of our mileage reimbursements being so high this last month? I mean, some of them are like $700 and over $1,000 for mileage reimbursements.
A lot of the sped folks that are traveling building to building will turn in one time per semester.
Oh.
They'll turn in right before Christmas and then right at the end of the year.
Okay.
I just saw a really.
I say, yeah, some of them were like really high, so that's why I was just curious.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to old business, we'll have an update on the sale of the Washington property.
I am very excited about Matt being here. I think, like everybody, I do not know what he's going to say, so I have as great as anticipation as everybody to hear his report. Thank you for being here, Matt.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back. I'll start off with the news. I was very hopeful I'd be here today. Sure, good news. However, we were informed very recently that we did not receive funding. However, we've got a little bit of a unique situation in front of us right now. I think Galen's passed some papers down for everybody, which is the allocating body, which is the Kansas Housing Resources Corporation, who is solely responsible for making a decision on whether they are funded or not, and really it comes down to one individual. It's very interesting. The director of Kansas Housing, which I've never seen this happen before in the 16 years that we've been in business, wrote a very strong letter urging your body to push this to 2020. They did not have enough credits to allocate the project this year. However, we received this letter, and I've also since sat down with him a couple times. The project received full point scoring on location, on city, community funding, etc. Where it lost out was really just on income targeting, and so that comes into what type of units we're offering. They wanted to see a little bit more discounted low-income units based on the community's needs. So they're strongly suggesting we come back in 2020, and you can read this letter however you want. They obviously cannot say, hey, we're going to approve this, but I, again, will tell you, I've never received a letter like this, nor have I talked to any other developers in the state of Kansas that have received a letter like this as well. So based on that and internally, we feel very strongly that this will be approved in 2020. So I wanted to come to you and obviously bring you the news that we had and tell you, here's where we are. Here's where we are, and leave it to you with some time to figure out what you want to do. Last time I had some time constraints, and at this point in time I don't. So I'm just recommending a couple things that would work for us, but really my point today is to give you the news and let you sit on it, mull it over, and make a decision when you feel that time is right, because we're not backs against the wall at this point in time. So if you were to allow me to continue, I would basically need site control again starting October 1st. And that again gives me time to go back and refresh my numbers with consultants, spend money, etc. So I would say between now and then, and I'm going to leave this up to you guys, whether you want to cancel the contract that's in place now or you want to leave that in place. That again is your decision. But we would suggest, and these are again just suggestions, that you would have the opportunity to shop this building out to alternative buyers between now and October 1st. At any point in time, if you do find a buyer that is willing to match our terms or better our terms, that we just have the ability of first right, which quite frankly, I don't have or will have the ability to close on that building without the tax credits. I don't have a use for it unless I specifically have that, and that's not a risk that we traditionally take. So giving you guys the opportunity to go out and find somebody else that can better the timeline that we've set forth is something that we would be obviously able to do, because we don't apply for these tax credits until February 1st. So doing that on October 1st, we would have a new contract for $5,000 hard money down, which is in addition to the purchase price that we've already outlined with you guys. And that's really just a good faith gesture to say, hey, we're serious. We're not just looking for you guys to burden everything. Just for your information, up until today, I've spent roughly about $30,000 pursuing this. So this isn't I'm just throwing some ideas at something and hoping that it hits. And again, me being here is hopefully you guys understanding that I'm very serious about this, and we do believe this is the next deal to get funded. In addition, knowing that you guys are going to want to close as quick as possible and getting us to be serious, I typically have indications far earlier than we did this year. It was kind of a last minute deal. They allocated pretty far out this year, so they had some pretty serious decisions to make as far as what was going to get funded. So June 1st is really the last date in 2020 that I feel that I would know if I'm being funded or not. So if I am funded, what I would want to do is give you guys $4,000 per month to extend that contract, basically every month that I need past June 1st to close. Typically, again, to go through environmental clearance and everything else, that kind of puts me into the fall range like we talked last year. So giving it something to where you guys aren't just sitting there again and there's not money coming in and covering costs. So again, we would be pushing at that point to close as quickly as possible, but at least it does give you guys some kind of comfort knowing, okay, they're serious and they're putting hard money down every single month at this point to extend. So I wish I was here with better news. It's kind of a mixed bag though, because I feel that rather than just being told a straight no and given a denial letter, we were given a letter that I don't think anybody else has ever received before, which to me shows the strong nature that the state and the government believes that there's an affordable housing need in Hayes. So happy to answer any questions you have. Again, I'm not asking you to take any action. And honestly, Gayla and I both talked, and we're willing to do whatever you guys want to do, whatever's easier for you, whether that's keep the current contract in place or cancel it. Again, you don't need to take that action tonight either. So we would just simply ask that 45, 60 days from now, if you're able to make a decision to allow us to process what those plans may be with this particular application. So again, happy to answer any questions you do have, specifically regarding this, anything with the state, and I'll answer them as best of my ability.
I would have a question, Matt. I know you're very serious to be here again and speak. but I am curious if the board was given time to then consider this and just make their decision of what they want to do. Certainly, questions could be formed with a little bit of time as well.
Sure.
As far as, so the opportunity of looking at our next board meetings in July and also in August, perhaps there's the opportunity for you to come back
Sure.
again.
Absolutely.
And that would be a good opportunity for them to have thought through things, put together questions, maybe even send you the questions ahead of time so that you're prepared to come back and address them so that they can move ahead at that point.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point, and happy to do it. Before I leave, I will pass out some business cards, and feel free to email me, text me, call me, whatever's easiest, and we'll figure out a date that works to give you guys plenty of time to make that decision, and I'll be here to answer those questions at that point, and again in the meantime as well.
When does the existing contract expire?
I believe it's December. And again, that's also something, if in the meantime as well, at the next board meeting, you guys make a decision that you want to go ahead and cancel the current, and then we figure out the next, we're happy to process that as well. So just let us know what you want to do. And unless there's any other questions, I'm happy to do that, and we can certainly get a plan together, and then I'll plan on seeing you here in about a month, month and a half, whatever we can work out on the schedule that works for you guys.
I have a question
Sure.
about the scoring. The section that you said did receive the points,
Mhm.
what section was that again?
So it was everything except targeting. So the site itself, the community side, so pretty much everything that's to do with that building, that site, site-specific stuff, which is the things you can't change, in the application, those all received high scoring. So is the targeting side, which is just me telling them, I want to have 5 units that are 30% targeting and 6 units of 40% targeting, which is all stuff that's very easily changed. So that's the really positive side that we see, is everything that you cannot change scored maximum points. All right, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, up next is the Oak Park Medical Complex update. Some representatives from Nabholz and Paul Wertberger here.
Good evening, and thank you for having us back again. Russ Beffert with Nabholz is joining me tonight as well. So just similar to last month, we'll just kind of go through a quick overview of each building as the pictures that were taken probably a couple weeks ago, I think when John was up there. So in Building 1, we just started floor covering, floor preparation last week, so that's going well. Building 2, the drywall work will be finished this week. Ceilings are starting to go up in that space as well. Building 1 and 4 are kind of tied together as far as the progress that's going along. A lot of work in the kitchens has been done. Ceiling tile and also floor covering has also started this week. We've also started on some of the site work this week. You'll see there in the picture that the asphalt has been removed. That's more or less the footprint of, I believe, the west storm shelter. So there'll be, as a reminder again, there'll be a storm shelter on both the east and west parking lots. The sidewalk, concrete sidewalks that you're seeing there, those are the new exit points out of Building 3. And then you'll just see some interior framing that still has a little bit of work to do in Building 3. That's really the only building. Of course, that's the last building that we obtained possession of, so that's also the one that we're targeting to be done towards the end of August. So again, there you're just seeing some more rough-in work, duct work, drywall work that's going. There are some pictures of the storage containers. So what you're seeing there is all of the casework that we've been repurposing throughout the buildings, as well as the new casework that's been going in buildings 1 and 4 so far, so.
A time frame?
I'm sorry?
Some of the board members are not aware. I mean, we have a couple that do come to the meetings and
Sure.
know what the time frame, how that's looking, but if you could share that with everybody, please.
I mean, obviously, everything is progressing very well. I mean, if we're not ahead of schedule, and for sure 4, I mean, 1 and 2 are right on with what we had. 4 obviously is ahead of schedule, and 3 is right where we were saying. So we've had no significant impacts to the schedule from where we started, so we're in good shape there. We are having our next progress meeting next Thursday, the 27th. Again, that's at our office, so that will be at 10 a.m. So any board members are welcome to attend that meeting. And then we typically do a site tour after that meeting. And as always, if there's times outside of that work better for you, just get a hold of myself and we can get something scheduled to do a site tour on site. But
I just asked the timetable because, again, I think we're only 6 weeks away from open house that the
Right.
chamber is going to end up having. That's August 2nd. What is the, is 2nd, August
Right.
2nd. So it's not that far away, although I think that building that we're going to focus on should be pretty much done. At
yeah,
that time.
1, 2, and 4 should be 100% complete by that point, and we'll still be working in building 3 at that point.
Yeah.
But there'll be opportunities for tour, and some of the site work, actually most of the site work should be done at that point too. So
Yeah. And I'd like to share too, for those board members that had not heard, but there's a plan of 2 different moves of equipment, or moves from Munger and also from the Washington building.
Right.
Of moving equipment and supplies from there to the new facility. The first one would be, what, the 3rd week?
I believe the 3rd week in July.
In
We've been working with
July.
Rusty and his staff to try to minimize it to 2.
Right.
So we can get all that done.
And the
So,
second one would be in August, and
Right.
that probably is more Munger being moved
Correct.
to the 3rd building.
Right.
Yeah.
And also as part of this, we are relocating quite a bit of playground equipment from both the Munger and Washington site. So as we start developing, we're just getting ready to start the playground site work here in the next couple of weeks. So as that develops a little bit, we'll start relocating some of that equipment. So.
Very good. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Glad to hear we're on schedule.
Very good. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and if I may, just to echo what Matt was saying, they appear to be right on track with the schedule they provided y'all. Every 3 weeks or so, either myself or our general superintendent, James McElhaney, have walked the sites. Everything safety-wise looks good, progress looks good, and I think they should be able to work on that.
You know, last week when I went out there and talked with Brian, I did not think the way construction people think in that regard, but his comment really caught me by surprise when he said all the rain that we've had, all that rain was to our advantage, because it relocated some personnel to have more working inside in our building than maybe some projects that they would have been outside, and never thought that was, that makes sense. So the rain did have some help for us in speeding up this project, so.
Sure.
Anything else? All right. Thank you,
Great.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, continuing on with the Oak Park theme, we're going to talk about the suggestions submitted for renaming of the Oak Park Medical Complex.
I
think
want to
everybody
point
has a
out
list.
that naming any facility is very challenging. It's, I do believe that it's a job that is for the board to do. The list that's there, there's a longer list, and I need the board's direction on this, because we pulled out about 10 different suggestions, and because they identified names of people. Now, That's up to you. If KSB would recommend not to go that route for different reasons. But it happens all over the state that schools do name buildings, public schools name buildings after individuals. It's just a matter of whether you wish to or not. So I don't wish to just take those off and say they didn't exist. They definitely exist. There's probably, I think, about 10 others that could be there and could be talked about. I know that for you to have the job of going through all of those and picking from them, I doubt if you want to do that. But I do think that the Rockwell staff, the administration, that they can work on this and come up with maybe a handful of suggestions and share with the board at the next meeting and work from that as to what you're thinking would be best. The question I have is, with the board's direction, do you want to include the names of individuals on it or not?
My question would be is what is their reasoning for not including them on there, especially since we have several buildings in our district that are named after.
Right. I think the reasoning that I have heard is just a matter of the, I don't want to say the word politics, but just a matter of who's whom, and picking. In some cases, sometimes individuals are picked where a good number of the community don't even know who that person is. It's it fits a group of individuals that know them, but others do not. It's a matter of where the meaning is, and I don't think it hurts anything necessarily. It's just a matter of whether or not the board wishes to go that way.
I guess my thoughts are if we had patrons submit those, I think we should at least consider them and look at them.
Well,
that's my thoughts.
And they are considered. I just, the issue is more a matter of we'll put those in with the others. We'll work from that. I would say that some individuals felt like, I think they shared with one another thinking that the more call-ins of a particular name was the way to do it, that if there was 10 or 15 people out there that called in and said this is what it should be, that then that had the most suggestions and therefore that would be it. That's not what our intent was. It was just a matter of getting suggestions and working from that. So we will do that, and there will be a group in the office here that will try to work from that and have a smaller. If you also look at that, you'll see that some of them, there may be 5 that have very great similarity too. Right. They may have different wording, but there's great similarity to how they're worded. And then there's some that maybe you saw the attachment of some of the preschools that already exist in our community. We don't want another preschool that has a close enough naming to one that already exists. So that's something that probably needs to be worked on and make sure we're not naming it something that's similar, closely similar to one that already is here in the community. So we can do that and bring that back to you at this point. With it, I think what needs to happen, I know I won't be here to share, but I think what needs to be shared is the rationale of those choices given to you. I'll give one in particular, and I don't even know if it'll be a choice that's given to you, okay? They may not pick it at all, but on this, you can see there's several of them that say, start with Oak Park. Oak Park Childhood Academy, Oak Park Early Childhood Complex. They have several that start with Oak Park. If I was here, I would only share that the only rationale that I would share for that one, if that was one of 5 that was picked, is just saying that Oak Park already has a mental location bearing for a good number of people in this community. So that would be a reasoning for it, not because basically we're partial to that name that, boy, this preschool needs to be called Oak Park. If you understand, it's more a matter because of just location. People know that name already. They kind of know where it is in town and can locate where it's at a little bit easier than a different name at that point. So if we have that kind of rationale for you on 5 different choices, that may help you and then working from it and making a selection at that time. So,
I understand, John, and not to undo what you just said, but I would just make a motion that we bring back this list together with those that were excluded and put it on the next meeting to be discussed and decided on by us. I mean, we can narrow the list down too, right? I mean, if there's a recommendation or they've got a top 5, I have no objection to hearing that from administration, but I just...
What would be our timeline for wanting to have a name selected so that it's?
I'd say timeline is not, we would love to have signage. You know, signage is an issue, and the sooner we know, the sooner we can work on the signage that would be out in front and be able to share that even with the open house. But I don't think that it's something that has to be done by August 2nd. It doesn't have to be. Whatever you're going to name it needs to be done with great thoughts so that it's you're happy with it for the next 20 years. You know, next 20, 30 years is what you really want to have, be pleased with what the name is for it. So I wouldn't worry about the timeline as much. I know there's some that would love to know it next week so they can start working on the signage and have that done. But.
And did we kind of, as far as like the list that's there already, did we publish that somewhere requesting names, didn't we, or something like that? There was something put out there to where we were requesting.
Yeah, that's how we, Sarah.
Okay.
Yes. I don't know when the last one was that we got it. We got all of these in that time frame, but I don't think we've gotten any in the last week or so, have we, Sarah?
Just additional requests for that one teacher.
Oh.
So I have a motion by Board Member Schwartz. Do I have a second to his motion?
I'd second it. I'd be interested in discussing it more and having everybody hear some more about it. So.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
So we're not going to continue to discuss it now, but put it on the agenda next.
He's moved that we have this list in addition to the ones that were excluded brought back to the board at the next meeting.
So we'll look at all of them.
No, we can look at all of them.
And also, did I hear if there is a recommendation of the top 5 that that could be also included?
And whatever would come back from administration as well.
Yeah, I'd be interested in hearing the top 5 at that time.
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Another Oak Park item, dissolving the Oak Park Condominium Association.
This has been, I wouldn't say it was difficult, it was just long in coming, and I appreciate very much Bill sticking to it and being persistent in getting to this particular point. If you have any details you'd like to share, Bill, please do, but it's just a matter of, for our purposes, the condominium piece of it hasn't really been enacted for probably 2 decades. I mean, have they even?
And for those who don't understand how condominium works, the developer would build these 4 buildings and divide each one into separate units. And they would market and sell the individual units. Every unit owner would have an undivided interest in the common areas, which would be the parking lot, sidewalks. Some instances, it's even the roof and the exterior walls of the buildings. As a part of that, a association would be formed and registered with the state of Kansas, which would consist of the members of the units. They would adopt their own rules and bylaws regarding the operation of the condominium unit, may even assess fees that would be used to upkeep the parking lot and sidewalks, etc. In this case, the condominium unit itself was all accomplished in 1983. The association was formed in 1983, but it was forfeited in 1991 for failure to file timely reports. At this point in time, because the ownership is all now united with one entity, that being the school district, there isn't any point in having the condominium unit.
I'd make a motion to dissolve the condominium association.
You speed me through that, so that
Sorry,
would be
Bill,
my
I don't think anybody's going to
recommendation.
object to it, so I
Yeah.
think we're going to do it, so.
All right, Evan.
We do appreciate your description.
Thank you.
All right,
Was that Sophia or?
We definitely appreciate the work you put into
Okay.
it.
thank you.
It's been moved by Board
I
Member
needed to say something.
Schwartz, second by Board Member Young. Is there any further discussion?
I've learned a lot about condominiums through this process.
There you go.
Go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. All right, motion passes.
And one other thing.
Yes, sir.
Once we get this filed in the Register of Deeds office, I've got an application for tax exemption, which we'll file, and it goes through the appraiser's office, then to the Board of Tax Appeals. And that will exempt taxes for 2019 and prior years.
Do you need a motion for that, Bill?
I think it'd be helpful if we did.
I'd move then, upon the filing with the Register of Deeds, that Board Attorney move forward on our behalf on applying for and obtaining tax exempt status.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Schwartz, second by Board Member Bickle. Any further discussion or questions? Call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you. I'm done.
All right, next, we have the workers' compensation, cyber liability, property casualty insurance renewal. So the first one is the workers' compensation and cyber liability insurance.
Andy, we have Mark Skidmore here from Assurance Partners to talk us through that.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time again. Since I was here last month, the Kansas Educators Risk Management Pool collectively shopped for workers' compensation. And instead of proposing, as I was telling you last month with United Heartland, I think Hartford Insurance Company's offer is too aggressive for you all to pass up. So I'm asking for you to relook at that. I would recommend the $5,000 deductible, as we talked about what that does to keep our experience modification low and how your staff has done such a great job at controlling our claims. I think a $5,000 deductible still makes sense, but you will see the difference between Hartford and United Heartland's offering is over $25,000. And given what we're experiencing on the property insurance side, we can end up with a renewal that is within $4,000 of our expiring from a year ago. So our cyber liability quote was unchanged. That is also bought in a group purchasing arrangement with the other members of the Kansas Educators Risk Management Pool. So we're using our clout and the 21 districts that are purchasing stuff together to get great pricing from Hartford on the comp and the cyber liability. So happy to answer any questions about either one of those, but those would be our recommendations.
And maybe I'm overlooking it, which page is the difference between the Hartford and the other one you had said?
Well, they're actually the very last page is where we showed United Heartland. There's also a landscape page. The one that's up on the screen right now.
I think so.
Oh, okay, I see it now. I didn't go far enough.
So once we get around to the $5,000 deductible, we're really comparing United Heartland at $102,000 versus Hartford at $76,000. And we've had a really nice relationship with United Heartland, but Hartford's pricing is just too aggressive, especially when we're having a property insurance increase on the other side.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that's the point of this, to save us money, so
Yeah.
it's working.
Yep.
How many claims did we have last year that paid out over $2,500?
I know all that information, just not here tonight.
I mean, the question on that is usually, I mean, you can't foresee the future, but when you look at your historical claims and run out the numbers, you should be able to figure out whether or not we're at risk, right?
Yep, and that was exactly the information I went over last month. Keith, I don't know if you've still got any of that information where we did the deductible analysis. But it was pretty glaring that we could take on more risk given our recent history.
And that's exactly how we do it. We take the last 5 years and lay it going forward and say, okay, what if we had it again?
And you're recommending the 5,000, correct?
Yes.
Are you comfortable with that, Keith?
Yes.
So what was our last year's premium? What was the last year we did?
I don't have that number. I had it. Mark, do you have that number? What was the question?
Last year's premium? What was last year's premium?
On workers' compensation was $124,000 with a $2,500 deductible.
Okay. That's a big drop.
Yeah, that's great. Grab all we can. Okay.
Do I have a motion on work comp and cyber liability?
I would make a motion to approve the district's workers' compensation and cyber liability insurance. Here it's listed as option 1 to go with Hartford with that $5,000 deductible. Looks like the amount of the renewal is, together it looks like $85,053.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion or questions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next thing is the Kansas Education Risk Management Pool.
So you will see at the top of the last page of our proposal is where we go into the pricing. If you look at the prior pages, there are very few numbers in red, and these are changes to the program from the pool. We got a little more coverage in building. Some of it is the addition of Oak Park too. We've got a slight increase in our contents limit, so the business personal property that we have in the buildings. Other than that, the program structure stayed the same. You will see on the very last page where it says program costs, the difficulty in shopping for property coverage in Kansas at this time. So our program fixed costs were $102,000 last year, $144,000 at renewal. Our loss fund, you'll recall our loss fund is the amount of monies that we have sitting in our pooled large deductible pot that has the ability to be paid back to us with good experience. And we're estimating 2 of the last 3 years are going to pay back. So we will start seeing distributions coming out of the pool. But our total program will be $181,218. We looked at optional deductibles within the pool of raising our property deductible, and given the reinsurance marketplace that they were out in, that didn't make any sense for us to take on any more risk for the minuscule dollars in savings that we were seeing. I think when you look at your 5-year premium summary, you will see that the benefits of the pool and the collective good experience of the 21 districts that are in there is paying off. The renewals that I've heard in the open marketplace have not been nearly as attractive as this, and they're ending up with a lot of program deductible type changes also. Fortunately, collectively, we were able to offset it with the workers' compensation.
If I'm looking at this right, some of the reason for the increase for us is that Oak Park complex as well,
Some of that is.
which is understandable.
I'd love to place a lot of it right there, but it's really not. The property insurance marketplace was just really difficult right now. Even though the pool has performed very well, just the craziness of the property in the Midwest is having an effect on the insurance companies.
Have any additional questions at this point?
item.
Do we have a motion?
Well, are we approving the property casualty renewal at 181,218? Yes, sir. 'Cause we already approved the first part, so actually,
Right.
is it option 2 we're looking at right now?
No.
No?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, then I move to approve the district's property casualty insurance renewal as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any additional questions or concerns? Go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chris, you're up.
At this point, I'm just asking for action to approve district assessments for the FY20, the 1920 school year. Talked about it the last few months. The overall increase in district assessments has more than been washed out by the reduction in state categorical aid. It's still, 5% is still the way to go, I think, but knowing that raises about $106,000 for the co-op, and between the $63,000 lot hit that we took for this year's funding and then the $75,000 that we're taking next year based on reduction to Cat 8. It's a good thing we did the 5%. We'll be talking about it again next year at this point in time, depending on what happens with state assessments. And, or with, I'm sorry, with state aid. The fact that there haven't been any increases in district assessments over the last 5 years is good, because, but it's not really sustainable. They did a good job of increasing assessments 6 to 7 years ago to get to a point where they could hold it flat. And that's what the superintendent asked for, is give us a predictable number. It's probably more reasonable when you look around other co-ops to expect between 2 and 5% every year, depending on what state funding does. But so long-winded way of saying the district assessments are there. I stand by the recommendation of 5%, but I would ask you to approve those for the co-op for FY20.
Can I clarify some of those numbers you gave?
Sure.
You said we're 110 short next year?
No,
that's what the 5% will
right,
generate.
5% gives us about 110. Because of reduction in Cat 8 this year, we're going to come in $62,000 short in what we had anticipated in revenue. And then the additional reduction for next year ends up, had we stayed at $30,610 per teacher, we're dropping all the way down to $30,000, so that costs us about another $75,000.
Well, and is it correct to add all those three up as to the additional?
Well,
or not?
110 increase in local funding.
Does it take care of the 74 or 70?
It's
or is that another number?
That's a different number. So state aid, basically, we thought we were here in state aid. We increased our district assessment to offset raises and increased costs and things like that, thinking we would be here with total funding. Well, in the last 3 weeks, state funding went to here.
So, and I'm just trying to count. So if we add those two together, we're about 185,000.
No, if we add, so what you do is you take the 106 minus the 138, so we're down about 32,000. By the end of next year, we're down about 32,000, despite adding 5% to the district assessment.
But the district's going to spend 110, plus we're spending another 74, right?
No, you're not spending another 70. We're the co-op, and that, when I say we, sometimes I talk about the district, sometimes I talk about the co-op. So that if we're looking just at the co-op's revenue and expenses, so the co-op's revenue, most of that comes from, when we talk about state aid, most of it's coming from state aid. State aid is going to be down about 138 by the end of next year. Now co-op revenue, part of that co-op revenue is district assessment. So the district is going to pay an extra 5%, which when you add all four up, that becomes 106,000. So we lost more in state aid than what we're gaining in district assessments from the co-op perspective.
So our only piece of it will be the 110.
Exactly. Yeah. 49's. Yeah.
Even on the 64, I think you did? Okay.
Yeah, none of that, yeah, so that's where it gets really confusing. When we're talking about, and it's that way when we're talking payroll numbers and everything else, you don't look at the co-op stuff, because the only thing you pay to the co-op is your district assessment, that 110.
I just want to make sure we wanted 250, because I think that's what those add up to.
No,
or
not
close to.
250.
You were asking the other districts to increase 5% as well?
Yes, yeah, so all of the districts, what you're doing as the fiscal agent for the co-op, you're approving the assessments for all 4 districts. And we've talked to all 4 districts, they know what their assessments are.
Well, I would make a motion to approve the 5% increase in the assessment for the special ed co-op.
Second?
Second.
We all second? All 3 of us?
Lance, you want to jump in?
I'll give to Mike.
Go for it.
All right, are there any additional questions or comments? All right, it's been moved and seconded, no questions. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Chris. Kansas Association of School Board renewal.
We did talk about this, actually not the last board meeting, but maybe one before that. In looking at the numbers and what's going to be offered, we did use about $1,000 this last year. The one question had to do with the $1,500 pass that you can end up getting with it. And the question was, is it worth it having that season pass for $1,500? With a new superintendent here, with the new board clerk, with at least 2 new board members, and we spent $1,000 this last year, I really feel that the $1,500 will be used and more. So that's why the recommendation is there to include it with this particular option within it.
I'd make a motion to approve the membership for the Kansas Association of School Boards, including the KSB season pass for next year and the legal assistance fund.
Have a second?
Second.
Been moved by Board Member Schwartz, second by Board Member O'Borney. All those, or is there any further discussion or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. All right. Last thing for old business is the 2019-2020 student fees.
Since the last presentation, really haven't changed that. I know 3 years ago there was the talk of trying to whittle down the fees because we have such a tremendous amount that the parents, when they enroll, have to end up paying. And we've made some gains in the last couple of years. The latest one that was made had to do with driver's ed, and that was already acted on a couple months ago. But this one is going to be with the high school technology fee, which was $50, and in our conversations really just having it cut 25 to be the same as what the middle school. So middle school and high school would be the same at 25 is the only change that's being recommended. Even when we talk about fees for food service, that would not change for this next year. Okay. And that's the one that typically is increased some.
So the only one is 25
Right, for the tech.
I would make a motion just to get the discussion started to leave it as is at $50 per student for next year.
I'll second it just so we can start discussion on it.
What's your reasoning for that, Greg?
Well, I think we're going to find out that we don't have an endless supply of money this year, even though we're getting a bunch more. And with everything else that we've been presented thus far, I don't know that it's going to be a good time to start cutting those fees. I also believe that another area to cut fees would be to cut it in some other regards, not on the technology end. So.
My other question was, and I don't know, maybe Scott answered this, but wasn't the reason that the high school was always higher was because they were laptops and not iPads as well?
They took them home was the initial.
Actually, at the very front end as to why it was 50, it was set first. Then there was one for the middle school, and the rationale was that it didn't need to be as much for it. I don't think that the thought process through that and the change in the technology, I think it's just a matter of time says it should have similar between the two. The needs as far as how much money is going to it, and felt like that was just fair, you know, of making a change there. What's the rationale of it being double at the high school?
Well, I think
And that's
that
what they couldn't come
the
up
reason,
with.
the way it was implemented in the first place is when we had the MacBooks, we had an insurance policy that, this
That
goes
covered
back
that.
to 03 or 04, that there was a $50 deductible. And then at some point in time, I don't remember what year, we decided to start eating and self-insure them, but we still charge the $50 to act in that regard.
And do we know where that's left us as far as I know, like in previous years where they went through and we had that set at? I mean, what was left over? I mean, what did we spend out of that 50 that we had on the other stuff on there?
Well, I don't have the numbers, but as I talked to Scott about it, I felt that he was sharing that he felt that there was money in repairing or tending to the student machines, if you're looking at that.
Well, I was just
that
curious,
there was-
based on the $50 that was paid in, how much
Oh,
of
how
that
much?
were we actually spending, you know,
Oh.
by the time you add that up for the high school?
Sure.
How much did we have left over? Was there a huge surplus?
Well, that's where the number comes, is saying that there, when you say huge surplus, there was a surplus. I mean, it ended up being, but you can end up easily put that towards, yeah,
Right.
you can put it towards something else.
Right.
The rationale partly ends up being, when you're doing that, does it make more sense to have a higher fee where all students are paying that? I mean, it's a different fee than just the technology. I do understand what's being proposed or what's said there as far as, are we at a position of cutting fees? This is trying to work from what was kind of set a couple years ago, saying we need to try our best to decrease the fees. But at the same time, it was a matter of looking at the fees that we have and trying to end up making rational decisions as to, you know, what makes sense, what's logical. The driver's ed, for instance. Driver's ed was accumulating money. And so that was why it was cut, is basically because we're saying that's the intent isn't to have driver's ed for the USD 489 to make money. It's not a money maker. That's not the intent. We want it to pay for the program, but not extra money. And I'd say the same kind of was the rationale for the technology as well.
I would just point out, when we went through all of Rusty's list of things, and when everybody said how important those things were, all that money that isn't getting spent on those comes out of capital outlay. And when we looked at that, nobody ever addressed the big elephant in the room, which was technology, which accounted for about 20% of the capital outlay budget. And this is one way to offset some of that, is to look at that. I mean, when we look at the numbers that we're short on cash reserves and everything else that was brought up several meetings ago, those are the things that, you know, I just don't think, you know, a $50 technology fee. I personally would be in favor of making the middle school the same as the high school. If they have to be taken home because they're a necessity, that's a small price to pay to have the use of a laptop or an iPad for a complete year.
Maybe I missed it, but how much money is going to be saved, lost from dropping it $25?
5 times.
Yeah, how many students are at the high school?
Well, if there's 700, it'd be 17,500. But I don't know exactly what the count is at high school. I was just guessing.
I think it's closer to 8.
Is that a pretty, maybe a little low, maybe a little better?
Yeah, how many is at the high school?
8?
200. My other concern on this too is, as with anything, when you get rid of a fee or even trying to add them back or change those, is obviously the first year or two may not be as big a deal, but going forward, I would think it'd be when those fees would be most important. As the laptops gain age, you have more chance for failure and more problems, i.e. when the warranty starts running out and stuff like that. So yeah, you could make an argument on the other stuff, but I just think it's one of those, I would agree. I think we're better off just leaving that there for now and looking into other areas where we could possibly cut. And I think that was actually one of the things I wrote down. I mean, TMP, I think even with their laptops, it plays substantially more for that, to be more than that to go through and do their laptops. I mean, I don't think we're by any means out of line.
Yeah, I was just asking Greg that. I couldn't remember for sure, but I think we pay $140 to, and that's just what it is.
Well, I think you pay 140 for the machine. If you want to
Take
do
it
the
home.
repairs yourself, it's 200. If you want to have the school keep the repairs.
I think I would be curious in knowing what other districts charge for fees, like altogether for fees for enrollment.
Well, one of the things we changed years ago is it used to be when you'd go through the course book at Hayes High, if you wanted to take a class, an elective class that had special fees, you paid extra. And we got rid of all those and lumped those into an activity fee that everybody got a share, even if you didn't use it or take any of those classes, which I'm not sure was the most fair way to do that, because if you're going to go take a bunch of extra electives that cost money, that maybe should cost you more. But so those are fees that are still lingering out there, and then the technology fee we have. But I don't think it would be that difficult to figure out what, you know, and it raises another issue we've talked about in other regards, but if we have that list of schools that we always look at, the 10 bigger or smaller than us, and those in the surrounding communities, it makes it real easy when you look at this stuff to say, here's who we're comparing ourselves to, and you know, and then when you go find that list, because if not, it just becomes a random list at times.
So would it make sense to basically then make a motion at this time until we get some information on that, if that's what they're wanting to approve everything except
Is
for
there any
that?
motion on the table?
Oh,
Well,
okay,
you could
never
make a
mind.
motion.
No,
On top of it,
I-
you could make a
that's
motion
good.
to table it and get that information.
If you do table it, could you just table the one
That's what I was
item?
saying, yeah.
Because we'd like to have
If
action
that's
on all
something
the
that everybody
others.
wants,
Where,
right.
Yeah.
That's all I was saying, is the one item, if that's the
Right.
case.
Well, that's it.
I'm fine with either way.
So the motion right now, well,
Is to leave it as is.
yeah. Greg's motion was to leave it as is.
It was just
But
Hayes High.
we want to follow up with possibly a motion to approve all the other fees except the technology
Technology
fee.
reduction.
If,
I like
that's-
it.
if that's what everybody
Yeah,
wants to do.
I like that idea.
Is someone making that motion?
I didn't make that motion, Mike, because I just seconded what he did just to open it
No,
up for
I
discussion.
mean, we have to
I'll
vote
amend
on
my
it.
motion to include approving
There
all
you go.
other
There's
fees
the
as
answer.
listed and leaving the Hayes High technology fee at $50.
There we go.
You have to second it.
I'll second it.
All right, the motion has been amended and seconded. Is there any further discussion at this point?
So we're voting on everything except for the high school technology fee.
Well, he's saying to leave it as is.
He's saying to leave it as is.
We'll just revisit it next week, or next meeting.
I'd be okay leaving it out tonight and then maybe voting on it next meeting after we have a little more information. I mean, I agree with our financial state. I'm just wondering, where actually is that? You know, is this fund 5,000 over? Is this fund $200 over? And then I guess the next thing is, what actual options do we have with that money? Does it have to, I mean, can it be used, what can it be used for, and can it not be used for?
General fund?
You can put,
Right? Yeah. I mean, that's,
Can it go to the replacement
Yeah.
fund in the next ones?
Well, and I think it should be known that this was definitely something we asked John to work on 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I mean, I can remember this board saying, well, we gotta lower our fees, we gotta lower our fees.
But we
That's-
have.
That's
Yeah.
cool. And we have, we really have. The workbook fee, if I correct me if I'm wrong, used to be 135. So, we have.
All right, so the current amended motion on the floor, on the table, is to approve all fees with the exception of the Hayes High technology fee, which is to remain as is. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion on this motion? I'm going to go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your hand at this point. All right.
Agree to it.
Good. I thought there was still discrepancy. All right.
Okay.
Motion passes 6-0.
Clarification, just if it's gonna change, I'll have to get another one.
Right.
Correct.
Correct.
We'll have to bring it up.
How it
too.
was last year, just remind everyone.
Yes.
it just
Correct.
stays as it was.
Right.
All right. Moving on to new business. The 2019-2020 student handbook revisions.
as every year, we end up having the elementary, the middle school, and the high school present the handbooks with changes that they may end up having. They were redlined, they're included. It's something to look over, and this is not action, of course, tonight. It's a matter of looking them over and asking questions, making any changes to that before the next meeting, in which would be action on it and vote on them at that time. So.
Are there any significant red flags, or is it just verbiage changes here and there?
Well, that for me, I'd say verbiage. That,
Okay.
but for board members looking through it, they may see something that they have question on, and if they do, then of course there's that time frame to check into it, call, ask question. But there's not a lot. I mean, there is in each one of them if you've seen that, but it's not. There's not too much really that's changed.
Okay.
So it gives you time to the next meeting.
Probably make
Unless
sure-
you already have something that you've identified that you have question on.
Probably makes you want to come back for the next meeting to see that through.
I'm okay with someone else working on
They
that.
need to see us on
It's fine.
Sound told you get back?
Okay.
My name is not centered. That's the only thing I have centered in the elementary handbook.
You can go ahead and take my
It's
name
a
out.
tabbing issue.
All right, moving on to the wage study.
No, you cannot take
Okay, wage study. Before you is a wage study that the Docking Institute completed for us. Really nice work. Thank you, Mike, and everyone at Docking. Tonight is an introduction. We'll use a guide on our wage discussions over next year, and we'll leverage the work to work on bringing our hourly wages where needed up to par. And so this is going to be a guide for us. I anticipate we'll create a committee of some type and decide how to approach it, as far as financing it, which will be the difficult part, of course. So they do have a nice little introduction in here on what it is. The purpose of this study is to provide district personnel and board members with a concise picture of wages offered for these positions among other school districts, Hayes employers, and employers in other cities of Kansas. Secondarily, this report provides examples of classified wage schedules used by school districts in the state of Kansas. So it gives us a nice comparison to see where we're at and what we need to do to even us up.
Hey, Mike, just a quick question on that. Since
Sure.
Bob, does this take into account also benefits packages from these schools?
Just wages.
Just due to the
wages
fact that
only.
obviously benefits packages play a big
Right.
deal in wages and all that.
But I want to clarify too that Dr. Jen's son, who's with the Institute, and Luis Montelongo actually did the study. I didn't, actually I wasn't involved, but no, it was wages only.
Okay.
May I point out something? I think it's really important in looking it over. When you start studying it and looking at it, I want you to make sure that you understand that what the study was looking mostly at starting wages. Starting wages. Okay, and the reason why I say that is the consideration of the average for those positions is not part of it, nor I don't know how they'd be able to necessarily do that or accumulate it. But the importance of the average would be the tail end of that study. At the back of it, they end up having a number of different schedules, wage schedules that exist. The wage schedule, tying that in, we can attack this simply by looking at that starting wage and making adjustments and changing it. Very, I'm going to say, very simple way to handle it, but it doesn't handle it over time. Over time, you'd have to have a schedule.
And that was the reason I was asking, 'cause
Yeah.
I mean, that's where the benefits and everything else come into play.
The
as far as-
schedule is one where you are looking at over time, those employees, you don't have that bus driver who's being paid that $10 an hour, who's been here for 18 years, and the other bus driver who was just hired getting paid $10 an hour. I'm sorry, $14 now. Okay, we increased that. But see, even with the bus drivers, that was done 2 years ago, that was wonderful, but it didn't answer the problem over time again. I mean, you're going to have the same issue in 10, 20 years from now, where you're still going to have bus drivers being paid $14 an hour and it's not putting into the thought as to worth of experience, in their position. So it's just a question there if that needs to be considered. If that's going to be considered, this is a very big job in making changes, because then it's inserting, it's that changeover to a schedule, and it's a changeover in all those areas of secretarial, bus drivers, food service. But that would be your choice. I'm just saying there's two ways to tend to it. You look at that, you could easily tend to this and probably tend to it this next year. You could do it in the next month by looking at that study and identifying 2 or 3 areas that just need higher pay. Just tag it on there, you're done. And if you want to do it that way, it's nice, clean, you're finished with it for this next year or the next couple years, but you may want to study it harder and look at it from a standpoint of some corrections that would work for 10 years, 20 years in that case. Is that how you saw it as well, Mike? Am I speaking correctly?
Yes, that's correct. In fact, I did help review some of the wage studies that were, schedules that were out there from all the different districts.
Right.
And Dr. Sun collapsed them into 4 major categories, which are in the study. And some of those are very interesting to look at. But yes, I think that's the way to go, with starting wage and then build the schedule after that, instead of trying to, that's a good way to start, I think.
Well, but why would it make sense to just pick a number and then go back and do a schedule? We already did that last year. I think wouldn't we want to have a schedule and then figure out how you're going to catch people up or put them in it that are existing? Because I think if you're just throwing a number out there, that's just an arbitrary number, and then this is a year you have the money. The question would be is what type of numbers are we looking at?
I'm just saying it's how you want to do it. That's all. There's an easy way, and I'd say easy because that's kind of how it's been done. Or there's the difficult way, which is really looking at a schedule and trying to work from that. And you're right, it'll take, actually Keith and I talked on that, and I think it'd take probably 3 years to work through a schedule to get it probably where you want it.
You're saying to come up with a schedule?
No, not coming up with a schedule.
Get people where you want them?
Yes, move people to where you want them. I don't think you could do that in 1 year. It would take a couple, 2, 3 years to get people where you feel it needs to be.
Well, my feeling is that good job where we're at thus far, but I don't know that it tells us what we need as far as what if you do a schedule and you plug them in that 3-year plan or 1-year plan, what's that number look like? Because if it's $40,000, that's a lot easier to stomach than if it's $400,000.
And I tell you, my mindset, Greg, being new, is that when we're hiring people on, it's that starting wage that John's talking about. We really don't have a good list of, sometimes we pick, like this seems to be a lot like this job, so we'll try to use that as an example. So if I was choosing, that'd be my first priority, is we have some type of approved list. Is this where we start people, and then work on that other piece? But of course, it's whatever board thinks.
Well, how much effort would it be to come up with that here's what our schedule should look like? The most important piece in year 1 would be to get the starting pay there and maybe a slight increase for those others. And then in year 2, we do this, and year 3, we do this. And
since we have this, I think it's doable. This was in my mind, it'll be hard work, but this was the piece we needed to, so we had the tool to get there.
I don't mean to just shuffle more work back to you, but it seems to me that, for me anyway, it's hard to make a decision without numbers, the total number, I think you're on the right track. I think it's definitely something we need to do, and it would be interesting to know from Lance's perspective of, because if a lot of those or most of them don't pay health insurance and we do, that could be $2, $3 an hour right there. Probably more for us because we're not on a 12-month calendar. It would be a lot more.
Sure. If I could twist your arm, I'd like to start that in September, get through this first budget year, and get our office settled so good, and then come back in August or September and start working.
I don't have any objection. The only thing I would say, the reason I would give you some pushback on that is we have negotiations, and I think that would weigh heavily on that, but.
Sure. And I think John had mentioned that was part of the emphasis of doing this, for
Right.
to use it as a tool.
Right.
Keith,
Even
you
if you-
mentioned a committee. How are you thinking about getting that committee formed?
Haven't thought that through completely yet, but I thought one thing that could help do is make recommendations if we were just going to target one area. I mean, if you read this, it's our clerical people that show that it's low. So we want to choose a spot, something that maybe is affordable for us to target, and we do sections at a time. I talked to some other districts, that's kind of how they did it too. So maybe formulate a plan that seems fair.
Curious to who you're going to put on your committee, I suppose.
That I don't know right now, to be honest with you.
Let me clarify a little bit too. The main purpose of the study was just to assess wages of employers in Hayes, of employer advertisements for jobs in different cities, and some different districts.
But it's just starting.
And as we were, right, as starting wages, and then as the folks were getting into the study, then the question of looking at schedules came up. Okay, so we explored that issue. So when I started speaking about the study, I went right to the schedules, but actually that wasn't the main purpose of this. The main purpose of the study was to look at wages. District wages, employers in Hayes wages, different cities' wages, and some districts.
And we talked about this when we had the raises, you know, a lot of these positions you wouldn't, I mean, I don't know that the appropriate measure to compare them would be what another school district's doing.
That's why we didn't just focus on districts.
Right. But it seems like maybe the local economy or the local pay would be much more consistent.
In fact, the table 1, if you want to look at it, is a lot of information in table 1. The first part of that, the top part of that study table is the wage survey from different districts. And then the middle portion that says Hayes employer wage survey, that came from a survey we did of Hayes employers. That's the average wage for those jobs. And the bottom part is looking at advertised jobs in those different cities. And we did the best we could to match them up and make sense. But that's kind of a complex table there. A lot of it was contacting districts and looking at secondary data, but then the survey of Hayes employers was actually a telephone survey.
Thank you.
You bet.
Keith, do you have enough direction from what the board is looking for the next?
I was just going to say, I hate to pull one from Greg's playbook, but do we need a motion to kind of, maybe solidify that we are all in agreement that this is what needs to happen?
Yes, I think that'd be helpful to Keith.
What do you need?
So
What
what do
do you want
we
to
have
have?
that motion?
I'll make a motion then that Keith come back to us when he feels, or when basically between him and Ron come up with a plan on when to bring it back to us for action, but a plan that looks at, that gets us a proposal over 1 year to 3 years and dollar figures that associate with those. And I know you said to attack one area at a time, but I think the difficulty with that becomes, who do you pick? And do you say this group's more important than that group, and then you've got that issue. So I guess if you could separate that into groups would be fine, and if we have to make a decision that way, we'll do what we don't want to have to do, but it would be better to be able to do them all at once if we could. And if paras are on that list too, then we probably need to have that looked at as well.
I'm just going to say.
So you're making a motion for him to not come back to us until he has options to present?
Yes.
I feel like I would like updates in between.
Well, I was going to say, I like that idea. Do we want to say, we'll readdress this in October? One of our October meetings, wherever it stands.
I would, hopefully it's sooner than that. You said September. I was hoping he was even sooner than that, but I don't want him to make him come back next month and then not be able to put together the plan.
Sure. And the only reason I was thinking October is because you mentioned September. There's a lot of things going on right now.
I serve at the pleasure of the board, so what would you like to
I
say?
don't feel like this is necessary.
The motion or the timeline?
I think we need,
Motion.
I think it is.
Yeah, it
just
is,
so
because
you
it
know.
It
sets
is.
direction.
Yeah, otherwise than, as in the past,
Otherwise, we'll
they
forget
don't.
about it.
It's,
They get
it's
busy.
directed.
Yeah.
And it's a consensus. It's all of us saying, you know,
Well, it might be all of us saying we don't want to do it.
well, that's true too.
There's no second yet, so.
All right, for Sarah's benefit down there,
Got all that?
Greg,
was the
could
motion?
I
you
can
restate,
restate it.
please?
Back in October.
That Keith come back to us with the plan, with numbers, and variations between a 1 and a 3-year plan, and separated by groups.
With the cost. With the
That
cost.
was the
Clarification.
numbers piece.
Would you like to see the schedule? That's what we're talking is?
If that's what you're
schedule-based plan?
proposing, yes.
I'll second that.
Okay,
Okay, we're going with
it's
the
been moved
schedule.
and
We're going to
seconded.
leave that up to you.
Is there any additional discussion, questions, clarifications?
I am confused. We're asking him now to come back with a schedule?
No.
He said if that's what
He
he's
asked that
proposing.
question, and my position on the motion is that he's to come back with a plan. If that includes a schedule, it includes a schedule. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Okay.
I
I
mean,
can
more than
talk,
one option of a proposal would be nice, not just one.
That's what he asked for.
Okay.
what I'll do is,
Options.
I'll survey districts that, excuse me, Sophie, I've surveyed districts that have went through the process, and I'll come back and talk to you about what they did. That would be my hope, is I can find that, and then that'll give us some more information. So,
Clear as mud.
Any other questions?
I was thinking it's muddy.
that's
Right.
right.
Timeline.
Talking timeline?
Sooner the better, but we didn't give you one.
Could
Hasn't
be a
been
good
voted
thing,
on.
could be a
but
bad thing.
Could change.
Okay. All right, we'll get something done.
Okay.
Have we voted?
Nope, we
Nope.
have not. Is there any other questions? Discussion? All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes 6-0. All right, next is the board attorney contract. Bill, you want this gig?
Try not to talk too much. It's the same contract as I'm under now. So.
You just need us to vote on that the next time.
Is there like a long-time
Yeah,
customer
for
discount
July.
that comes with this going forward?
Pardon?
I said, is there a long-time customer discount that comes with this going forward?
Do you have a projected retirement?
Not yet.
Charging a headache fee though. It'll balance out.
All right. You guys can take a look at that and we'll vote on it the next time. Board policy update.
A little bit of surprise. Donna was aware of this, brought it to me couple weeks ago, and federal reports dealing with the Head Start, you can see the red line that has to be added to it. There was already the policy, but that part at the very end, federal reports, financial status reports, and real property status report needs to be included within our policy. So it's not, I don't think it's really of any question, it's just a matter of it needs to be there. And so if you look through it, and if you have questions, be prepared for the next meeting as well for it.
Okay. All right. Anything else on that right now?
No.
Okay. Are there any additional discussion by board members or agenda requests at this point?
Yes, maybe, some discussion. We vote, we hold our elections in July. We have the elections for new board members in November. Has there been any discussion of pushing back our elections until the beginning of the year?
It's been discussed multiple times because it doesn't make sense.
We can't, is my understanding,
Yeah.
but we could renominate and elect everybody to their same
Greg.
positions.
Do we?
Oh, I
Throwing that out there.
And then actually have the elections again in January.
You guys could.
There was something with that bill, wasn't it? Because that's been asked about before when they changed it to
Yeah,
November. We
and
can't.
The law was not changed as regards to board elections.
Yeah. Doesn't make
Still
much sense, the
July.
fact that, yeah, you do that when you have some board members that may not even be
So
on
they
the board.
discussed it, but we can't
I
actually.
don't know if they discussed it at all. It just didn't get changed when they changed the election laws
No,
to
Mandy, appreciate you doing it
Okay.
over here. It's awesome.
August to take office in January.
I heard you volunteer. Thanks.
My question is, I guess what is your your
No, I just.
end goal by wanting to do that?
No,
Just so you have the new
just
board
seems
members
odd
on
that
and
we-
have the opportunity to put them in that role right away?
Well, I think that'd be kind of absurd, yeah.
Well, it actually.
Just a question to discuss.
It probably makes more sense to do it as is from a
Oh, I-
stability perspective, because you're not doing that in January to where you could have,
Brand new board members.
well, you could have somebody that just got on the board that doesn't really know what they're doing before president.
They have to be voted.
But if you get
I
4 new
just
people,
thought-
sorry.
My
Lucky, that are out
understanding
there.
was that how did it go with the board elections in April before, is that correct?
They used to be.
And now they're November after, okay.
You used to take your seat July 1.
Right. So Luke and myself and Paul have had the pleasure of serving 4.5 years on this term rather than 4. So,
Well, what's another half year then? What's
Well,
the-
not yet. Depends on July. We start our last 6 months.
it'll be the last 6 months.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Nope, that's all I wanted, is a little discussion, that's all.
all right. Well, we get to discuss it more next meeting too, so.
Okay.
All right.
Hearing Mandy's on the fence about it.
Anything else at this
Can I
point?
just get clarity on
Probably
the
not.
student fees? Because we voted to keep it the same. What information are we getting next meeting?
I don't.
Nothing was asked for at this point. If you would like
Go
something,
ahead,
you
if
could
you'd like to
ask.
ask for something.
Well, correct me if this wouldn't make sense or wouldn't be helpful to anyone else, but I would be curious to know not only what some districts are doing for technology fee, but just kind of the basic fees for enrolling. So,
Sure.
how much does it cost just to have your student enrolled with the technology fee, activity fee into the school and compared to other school districts?
I can share, we can get that for you, Sophia. But I will share with you that I'm afraid it will be disappointing to you because it probably won't help guide you. There's such a variety that exists out there. The range is tremendous, and I haven't done this in a couple of years, but I have all the confidence the range will be great as far as what it is. So,
What do you think that range is then, if you're saying it's?
well, I think the range can be that there's no fee, clear to a fee of $75. You know, I believe that's how big the range can be.
But you'll have schools that are charging, instead of activity fees, they're charging for each class.
Yeah,
and-
Yes.
it's gonna be all over the
Well, I
So-
was looking, okay, so if I had a kid going to Hayes High School and I wanted them to do sports, there's like that $90 fee for.
That's for every
Everybody
student.
plays it, it doesn't
and then
matter.
the $90 fee and then the.
That's what we changed. It used to be you pay
Yeah,
the
it's like
sports fee.
$206.
Yeah, it doesn't matter though if your kid plays sports or not.
Everybody pays for it.
Everybody pays for it.
Just wait till they want to take concurrent credit classes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a chunk of change, all right. It's less than it used to be.
It is. It's pennies on the dollar compared to.
Poor kids go
going
to Hayes High, you know.
Yeah, and I greatly love having that opportunity. It's just difficult when you have to get out the checkbook.
So the activity fee, everyone pays that even if they're not doing sports?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so the workbook material fee of $90, the tech fee of $50, and then the activity fee of $66, that's what they all pay?
Every student.
At least, yeah. I mean, there's gonna be little stuff to it.
Okay.
So to clarify, Sophia, it's not going to be on the next agenda unless you ask.
For something.
It was voted to keep them as is.
Okay, so we're not discussing it next time?
No, it's been voted to keep it as is.
Unless you want to.
Okay, I missed that. I'm cool with keeping it then. I wasn't sure, I thought maybe we were discussing it next time. Okay, thank you for helping me clarify that in my own brain.
Anybody else? All right, we have 2 executive sessions tonight. So the first one, I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session under the following exemption to the Kansas Open Meetings Act pursuant to non-elected personnel matter exception. Open session in this room will I need a restroom break. We'll resume at 8:25. And will include the Board of Education and Mr. Josh Waddell.
Is that enough?
What?
Is that enough?
Is that enough?
15 minutes.
Do you, we can come back down.
Yeah, I know, but it's, can't you just, well,
What,
do we have to separate each one, Bill?
we don't, but
You don't, you can.
I would like
You
to
can
run
make a motion now to, for the next, second one to start when this one is.
I would like to keep them separate for right now.
Second.
Okay? Been moved and second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.